Using the target language and providing comprehensible input for instruction is one of 6 StarTalk endorsed principles for effective teaching and learning. Students learn best when their instructor speaks the target language at least 90% of the time in the classroom. At the One World Now StarTalk Summer Language Camp in Seattle, Washington, Mandarin Chinese instructor Jiajing Lin communicates with her novice learners almost exclusively in Chinese from day one, even though they had no prior knowledge of the language before enrolling in the course.
Oh, that's what's called immersion class, immersion environment. It's totally doable to use the target language to teach the target language. Is you have to give students an environment that, if they actually go to China, if they actually go to Taiwan, when no one speaks English, the only thing they can use is the target language.
Students modulate their behavior based on what their teacher implicitly signals is most important. When the teacher speaks mostly in the target language, students realize that it matters and are more willing to communicate in the language as well. Students also practice their interpretive listening skills throughout the class. However, the teacher reserves the right to speak English in specific situations, such as to address a serious behavioral issue. The teacher must also make language comprehensible for students. Learners will not benefit from hearing a stream of language that is much too complex for their level. Rather, their language skills grow when they are exposed to words and structures that they can mostly understand. The teacher uses a variety of techniques to help her students understand the language she is using. The teacher speaks the target language in a correct but simple manner, mostly using the vocabulary words students have already learned or are currently learning. When students hear a small number of words frequently, they're more likely to absorb them.
Repeat. I think repetition is the best tool, especially when it comes to teach a language.
Rather than defining vocabulary words in English, the teacher uses culturally appropriate images and body language to convey the meaning of new words in this lesson on Chinese cooking.
You have to be very expressive. TPR is always the best tool as a language teacher. You have to use a lot of it. You have to use a lot of facial expressions. And then especially being a language teacher, you have to be willing to step out of your comfort zone. Like you want to be goofy so they can remember what you're saying. Basically, you're trying to make yourself memorable.
Avoiding translation is an important part of maintaining the target language environment.
Wow.
When students know that the teacher will translate the language for them, they're less likely to try to understand it on their own. When students know they will be asked to translate, they focus less on communication. Although the teacher uses multiple strategies to make her language comprehensible, she also accepts that students do not need to understand every single word she says to thrive in her classroom. By checking frequently for understanding, she knows whether students have understood the most important parts of the lesson. One way the teacher checks for understanding is by posing simple questions using the vocabulary students are learning and assessing students' answers in the target language. She also teaches simple phrases that students can use to tell her whether or not they understand without using English.
I use 懂不懂,会不会, 难不难, that means do you understand? Do you know how to do this? And then is this difficult or not? And because I've been using those phrases since day one, they know, and those are really great indicators or tools for me to make sure students are following my instructions before I move on to the next topic. 那现在老师要介绍一下.
As a final step, students complete their own cooking demonstration. Without ever speaking English, the teacher can see whether students have understood the vocabulary and can use it. How do you stay in the target language in your classroom? How do you make sure students understand the language you are using?
StarTalk is a program of the National Foreign Language Center, sponsored by the National Security Agency.